I stood nervously at my sister Amanda's wedding reception when she approached with an older man in an expensive suit. "This is my brother Frank, the unemployed loser of the family," Amanda said with a smile. Before I could respond, my parents chimed in. "She's the disgrace of our family." The man looked at me intently, then turned to Amanda with a cold smile. "Amanda, you're fired. Effective immediately." Amanda's champagne glass slipped from her hand, shattering on the floor. The entire room fell silent as all eyes turned to us. Growing up, Amanda and I were inseparable. As the older sibling by just 2 years, she was my protector, my guide, and my best friend. We built blanket forts in the living room, rode our bikes through the neighborhood until sunset, and shared whispered secrets long after our parents thought we were asleep. Those early years were golden, untainted by the competition and judgment that would later drive us apart. Our parents, David and Patricia Keller, were successful professionals with ambitious dreams for their children. Dad ran his accounting firm with precision and unwavering standards, while Mom worked as a hospital administrator. From the beginning, they recognized Amanda's academic brilliance. She brought home perfect report cards, won spelling bees, and seemed to absorb information effortlessly. My parents beamed with pride at every achievement, setting her up as the standard-bearer for the Keller family. For me, traditional schooling was an endless struggle. Letters jumped around on pages, math problems became jumbled puzzles, and classroom instructions often sounded like gibberish to my ears. My parents attributed my difficulties to laziness, lack of focus, or simple disinterest. "Why can't you be more like your sister?" became the soundtrack of my childhood. What no one recognized until years later was that I had undiagnosed learning disabilities that made traditional academic settings nearly impossible for me to navigate. While classroom learning eluded me, I discovered a natural affinity for working with my hands. By age 10, I could disassemble and reassemble our lawnmower. At 12, I renovated my entire bedroom without help, installing shelving and building a custom desk that impressed even my perpetually disappointed father. When our neighbor's antique rocking chair broke, I restored it so beautifully they insisted on paying me. But these achievements never seemed to register with my family as legitimate successes. As we entered high school, Amanda's academic star continued to rise. Valedictorian, student body president, state debate champion. She collected accolades like trophies, displaying them prominently for our parents' approval. Meanwhile, I barely graduated, spending most of my time in the school's workshop where I found sanctuary among tools and raw materials. "Just applying to community college?" Amanda asked during my senior year, her voice dripping with condescension. "I guess that's appropriate for your abilities." Our parents nodded in agreement. "At least he's continuing his education," Mom said with a sigh, as if I were in the next room instead of sitting right at the dinner table. College widened the gap between us. While Amanda sailed through an Ivy League business program, I struggled through 2 years of community college before dropping out to start my own custom furniture business. Using a small inheritance from our grandfather, I rented a workshop space and began creating handcrafted pieces that quickly gained attention among local designers. For 3 years, my business flourished. I hired 2 assistants, expanded to a larger workspace, and even saw one of my chair designs featured in a national magazine. For once, I felt successful on my own terms. Then the recession hit. Custom furniture became a luxury few could afford, and despite my best efforts to pivot toward more affordable options, my business collapsed under mounting debt and dwindling orders. Amanda, who had secured a marketing position at a prestigious firm by then, couldn't resist using my failure to reinforce the family narrative. "See what happens when you don't have a proper education to fall back on?" she told me over the phone after learning I had closed my shop. "Maybe now you'll take life seriously." What she and my parents never bothered to ask was what I planned to do next. After liquidating my business assets and paying off creditors, I was temporarily unemployed but actively developing plans for a new venture focused on sustainable, modular furniture for small urban spaces. I had meetings scheduled with potential investors, a business plan under review with a small business development center, and promising leads on a manufacturing partnership. But in my family's eyes, I was simply unemployed, another failure to add to my record. When Amanda's wedding invitation arrived in the mail, I almost threw it away. Our relationship had deteriorated to obligatory holiday phone calls and tense family gatherings. Still, something made me hesitate. Perhaps this milestone event would offer an opportunity for reconciliation, a chance to reset our relationship as adults rather than competitive siblings. I RSVP'd with an optimistic heart, determined to support my sister despite our differences. A week before the wedding, I met with an old friend who had attended college with Amanda. Over drinks, Tim revealed something that sent a chill through me. Amanda told everyone in her circle that you're mentally unstable, he confessed uncomfortably. She says your family supports you financially because you're incapable of holding down a job due to your condition. I nearly choked on my beer. What condition? She's never specific, just implies there's something wrong with you. Everyone in her professional circle believes you're essentially dependent on your family's charity. The revelation staggered me. My own sister had been actively constructing an elaborate fiction about me to enhance her own image. I considered skipping the wedding entirely, but ultimately decided to attend. I needed to see for myself what other narratives Amanda had been spinning at my expense. The Preston Hotel stood like a gleaming monument to luxury in downtown Seattle, its marble columns and crystal chandeliers announcing to all guests that Amanda Keller's wedding would spare no expense. I adjusted my tie nervously as I entered the rehearsal dinner, clutching a handcrafted wooden box containing my gift. Inside was a custom jewelry box I'd spent weeks creating, with intricate inlays depicting Amanda and Tyler's first date location, the Seattle waterfront where they'd met 3 years earlier. "Frank, you made it," Mom said as I approached the family table, her tone suggesting surprise rather than pleasure. "We weren't sure you'd come." "I RSVP'd weeks ago," I reminded her, leaning in for a stiff hug. Dad gave me a cursory handshake. "You clean up nice, son? New suit?" "Actually, yes," I admitted. I'd spent a significant portion of my savings on appropriate attire, wanting to look respectable for Amanda's big day. My sister was holding court across the room, surrounded by friends I didn't recognize. She caught my eye but made no move to approach, instead whispering something to a blonde woman beside her who glanced my way with unconcealed curiosity. Throughout the evening, I made polite conversation with extended family members, many of whom seemed surprised to see me functional and articulate. "Amanda mentioned you were having a rough time," my cousin Sarah said. "She's been so worried about you." By the time I met Tyler, Amanda's fiancé, I had encountered this sentiment from at least 5 different relatives. Tyler himself seemed uncomfortable shaking my hand, his eyes darting over my shoulder as if seeking an escape route. "Amanda speaks of you often," he said vaguely. "All good things, I hope," I joked. His forced laugh told me everything I needed to know. Later that evening, I found a quiet spot on the hotel's terrace, needing a moment away from the sympathetic glances and awkward conversations. 2 women from Amanda's work were chatting nearby, unaware of my presence. "Can you believe that's him? The brother with all the problems?" one whispered. "Amanda's been supporting him financially for years, apparently. Some kind of breakdown after his business failed." "So generous of her," the other replied. "I couldn't handle that kind of burden, especially with someone so unstable." I gripped the terrace railing until my knuckles whitened, fighting the urge to confront them with the truth. Instead, I retreated inside, bumping directly into an older gentleman in an impeccably tailored suit. "Excuse me," I mumbled, moving to step around him. "No worries at all," he replied, studying me with interest. "James Reynolds," he introduced himself, extending his hand. The name registered immediately. Reynolds Creative was one of the top design firms in the Pacific Northwest, and Amanda had been bragging about her position there for months. This man was her boss. Frank Keller, I replied, shaking his hand firmly. Keller? Any relation to our Amanda? Her brother. Something flickered in his eyes. Recognition? Curiosity? Before he nodded. Interesting. Amanda's mentioned you. Before I could respond, my sister materialized beside us, looping her arm through Reynolds' elbow. James, I see you've met Frank, she said tightly, shooting me a warning look. Let me introduce you to Tyler's parents. They're considering Reynolds for their company rebrand. As she whisked him away, I couldn't help but notice how he glanced back at me with undisguised interest. The next morning, while helping with last-minute wedding preparations, I overheard Amanda regaling her bridesmaids with stories from our childhood. Frank once got suspended for setting off the fire alarm, she laughed. He thought it would get him out of taking a test he hadn't studied for. What she conveniently omitted was that I'd pulled the alarm because I'd actually spotted smoke coming from the science lab, an action that had potentially saved lives and earned me a commendation once the facts were established. When I tried to place my handcrafted gift among the other presents, Amanda's wedding planner intercepted me. Oh, gifts go in the back room, she said, directing me away from the elegant display of wrapped boxes. Following her instructions, I discovered a secondary collection of gifts hidden from view, clearly deemed not attractive enough for display. These will be transported directly to the couple's home after the reception, the planner explained before hurrying away. I was arranging chairs for the ceremony when an elderly woman approached me, her eyes bright with recognition. You must be Frank, she said, extending a frail hand. I'm Elaine Winters, Tyler's grandmother. We shook hands, and she held onto mine a moment longer than necessary. Tyler showed me the beautiful chest you made for his office. Extraordinary craftsmanship. Do you have a card? My husband needs a new desk for his study. Stunned, I fumbled for one of the few business cards I still carried. I'm between workshops at the moment, but I'd be happy to discuss a custom piece. Talent like yours shouldn't go to waste, she said firmly, tucking the card into her purse. I look forward to hearing from you. As I watched her walk away, I spotted my handmade wedding gift being carried further into the back room, placed behind larger boxes, as if it were an embarrassment. In that moment, I nearly walked out of the wedding entirely. But something, stubbornness perhaps, or a lingering hope for reconciliation, kept me there, straightening chairs for my sister's perfect day. The ceremony proceeded with flawless precision. Amanda looked radiant in her designer gown, and Tyler beamed with pride as they exchanged their vows beneath an archway of white roses. From my seat in the fourth row, not with the immediate family in front, I felt a complex mixture of emotions: pride for my sister's happiness, hurt at being sidelined, and a growing resolve to rebuild my life regardless of my family's perception. The reception began with cocktails and hors d'oeuvres in the hotel's grand ballroom. Crystal glasses clinked, string quartet music filled the air, and guests mingled in their formal attire. I stood alone near a towering ice sculpture, nursing a whiskey and observing the celebration from a distance. Quite the affair, isn't it? James Reynolds appeared beside me again, this time with a glass of champagne in hand. Amanda never does anything halfway, I replied. Indeed. He studied me with that same curious expression. You know, you look familiar beyond the family resemblance. Before I could respond, Amanda approached us, her smile tight at the edges. She had changed into her reception dress, a sleek column of silk that emphasized her slender frame. Behind her trailed our parents, both looking uncomfortable as they realized who I was speaking with. James, I wanted to properly introduce you to my family, Amanda said, her voice pitched to Carrie. Several nearby guests turned to watch. These are my parents, David and Patricia. Reynolds shook their hands cordially. And this, Amanda continued, her tone shifting subtly, is my brother Frank, the unemployed loser of the family. The words landed like a physical blow. A few nervous titters came from the surrounding guests, who clearly thought she must be joking. but the cruel smile on Amanda's face confirmed she was entirely serious. Before I could recover enough to respond, my father stepped forward. "Frank has always struggled to find his place," he said apologetically to Reynolds. "We've tried to help, of course." My mother nodded in agreement. "She's the disgrace of our family," she added, her voice carrying in the sudden quiet that had fallen around us. I stood frozen, publicly humiliated by the people who should have supported me most. The surrounding guests shifted uncomfortably, some pretending to be engrossed in conversation, while others openly stared at the unfolding drama. James Reynolds looked at me intently for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he turned to Amanda with a cold, calculating smile. "Amanda, you're fired, effective immediately." The silence that followed was absolute. Amanda's champagne glass slipped from her fingers, shattering against the marble floor in a spray of crystal and expensive bubbles. Her perfect makeup couldn't hide the shock draining all color from her face. "What?" she finally managed, her voice a strangled whisper. "You heard me," Reynolds replied calmly. "Clear out your desk by Monday. Security will supervise." "This is a joke," Amanda said, forcing a laugh that sounded more like a gasp. "James, it's my wedding day, which makes your behavior even more reprehensible." His voice remained measured, but carried an edge sharp enough to cut. "We'll discuss the details later. For now, I suggest you attend to your guests." As Reynolds walked away, Amanda's shock transformed into fury. She whirled to face me, her perfectly manicured finger jabbing into my chest. "What did you do?" she hissed. "What did you say to him?" "Nothing," I protested, acutely aware of the audience gathering around us. "I barely spoke to him before you came over." "Liar!" The word exploded from her with such venom that several guests visibly recoiled. "You've always been jealous of me. You planned this somehow." Tyler materialized at her side, his face a mask of confusion. "What's happening?" "Amanda, everyone's watching." "Ask my brother," she spat. "He just got me fired. On my wedding day." My parents closed ranks around Amanda. "How could you do this to your sister?" my mother demanded, not bothering to lower her voice. "Haven't you taken enough from this family?" "I didn't do anything," I insisted, feeling the room spin around me. "I met the man twice, and barely said 10 words to him." "Get out," my father said, his voice flat and final. "You've done enough damage. Dad, please. You can't seriously think I orchestrated this." Amanda was now openly crying, her mascara creating dark rivers down her flushed cheeks. "It's always about you, isn't it, Frank? Even my wedding day has to become the Frank pity show." Tyler placed himself between us, his back to me. "I think you should leave," he said over his shoulder. "Now, Tyler, you know me better than that. I would never—" I didn't see who pushed me first. Maybe it was my father, or perhaps one of Tyler's groomsmen. But suddenly there were hands on my shoulders, forcefully moving me toward the exit. I stumbled backward, aware of the horrified stares from wedding guests who moments earlier had been celebrating. "Sir, I'll need you to come with me." A hotel security guard gripped my elbow firmly, guiding me toward the door with practiced efficiency. "Let's not make a scene. This is a misunderstanding," I tried to explain as he escorted me through the lobby. "I'm the bride's brother." "I'm aware, sir. But the family has requested your removal." Outside, the afternoon sun felt obscenely cheerful against my humiliation. The security guard released my arm once we reached the sidewalk. "I can't allow you back in the building tonight," he said, not unkindly. "Hotel policy for removed guests." I nodded numbly and watched him return inside. For several minutes, I stood on the sidewalk, trying to process what had just happened. My sister had publicly degraded me. My parents had joined in, and then by some bizarre twist, her boss had fired her on the spot, and somehow I was being blamed for all of it. My car was valeted, the ticket still in the pocket of my suit jacket. But approaching the valet stand meant potentially encountering more wedding guests. and I couldn't bear additional humiliation. Instead, I walked to a bench in the small park across from the hotel and sat down, loosening my tie in the warm summer air. An hour passed as I sat there, watching guests come and go, some leaving early, others arriving late. I couldn't bring myself to leave, still stunned by the abrupt transition from wedding guest to family pariah. My phone remained silent, no calls or messages from anyone checking on me or offering support. Just as I finally stood to leave, a familiar figure emerged from the hotel and scanned the area. James Reynolds spotted me across the street and raised his hand in acknowledgement. After checking for traffic, he crossed toward me with purposeful strides. "Mr. Keller," he said as he approached, "I thought you might still be nearby." I tensed, expecting further accusations or explanations for the scene he'd caused. Instead, he reached into his jacket pocket and withdrew a business card, offering it to me. "I'd like to meet with you tomorrow morning," he said. "9 o'clock, my office. The address is on the card." I took it automatically, too confused to refuse. "Why would you want to meet with me?" Reynolds adjusted his tie, his expression giving nothing away. "Let's just say, I'm interested in discussing a business proposition. Will you come?" I stared at the embossed card in my hand, the name Reynolds Creative printed in elegant silver font against heavy stock paper. "I don't understand what's happening." "Tomorrow, 9 a.m., he repeated. "All will become clear." With a final nod, he turned and walked back toward the hotel, leaving me standing alone with his business card and a head full of questions. I barely slept that night. My hotel room, paid for in advance, and thankfully not at the Preston, became a pacing ground as I replayed the wedding disaster in my mind. By morning, my confusion had transformed into a simmering anger. Why should I meet with the man who had so publicly destroyed my sister's career on her wedding day? Was this some elaborate power play? Another humiliation waiting to happen? Several times I picked up Reynolds' business card, with the intention of tearing it to pieces. Yet something held me back. Curiosity, perhaps, or the nagging sense that there was more to this story than I understood. At 8:30, I found myself in the lobby of a sleek downtown office building, having decided that showing up didn't obligate me to accept whatever proposition Reynolds had in mind. The elevator carried me to the 12th floor, where frosted glass doors proclaimed Reynolds Creative in the same elegant font from the business card. The receptionist directed me to a waiting area, furnished with design pieces I immediately recognized from leading contemporary creators. I was examining the joinery on a particularly beautiful coffee table when Reynolds emerged from an interior office. "Frank, thank you for coming," he said, extending his hand. "Please, join me inside." His office was a designer's dream, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Puget Sound, walls lined with prototypes and material samples, and at the center, a massive desk that appeared to be a single slab of salvaged redwood. "Coffee?" he offered, gesturing to a sleek espresso machine. "I'd rather you explain yesterday," I replied, remaining standing despite the chair he indicated. Reynolds nodded, accepting this. "Fair enough. Please understand that firing Amanda was not a spontaneous decision. Her behavior at the wedding was merely the final confirmation of character issues we've been monitoring for months." "What do you mean?" "Your sister has been taking credit for colleagues' work, sabotaging team projects that weren't under her direction, and generally creating a toxic environment in our creative department." He moved to his desk and opened a folder. "We've documented multiple incidents. Yesterday simply removed any doubts I might have had about proceeding with termination." I frowned, processing this information. "Why are you telling me this? And why invite me here?" Reynolds leaned back against his desk. "Because I recognized your name immediately, Frank Keller. I've been following your work for years." "My work?" I repeated, certain I'd misheard. "Your furniture designs." The Keller cantilevered bookshelf was a minor sensation in design circles 3 years ago. That chair that appeared in Architectural Digest? Brilliant use of negative space. When the recession hit and your business disappeared, several of us in the industry noticed the loss. I stared at him, speechless. While I'd received positive feedback from clients and a few industry mentions, I'd never imagined someone of Reynolds' stature would know my work, let alone remember it years later. "Please sit," he said again, and this time I did, sinking into a chair that I now recognized as a Mies van der Rohe original. "I'm still not following why I'm here," I admitted. "Reynolds Creative is expanding into sustainable workspace design," he explained. "We've secured several major contracts to redesign corporate offices with an emphasis on environmental responsibility and employee wellness. What we lack is someone who truly understands how to marry form and function in wood. Someone with your specific talents." "You're offering me a job?" I asked incredulously. "A consulting position to start, with potential for a permanent role depending on how the initial projects develop." My mind raced through implications. This will destroy what's left of my relationship with Amanda. She already thinks I somehow engineered your firing her. Reynolds sighed. "That's your personal decision, of course. But consider this. Your sister has been actively undermining your reputation professionally for years. We recently acquired a new client who mentioned passing on a potential collaboration with you because Amanda warned them about your reliability issues. The revelation felt like ice water in my veins. She actively sabotaged my business opportunities? I believe so, yes." He paused, seeming to consider his next words carefully. "There's something else you should know before making your decision." He crossed to a filing cabinet and withdrew a portfolio, placing it before me on the coffee table. Inside were design renderings for a modular shelving system that looked startlingly familiar. This concept was presented by Amanda 3 months ago as her original work, Reynolds explained. She received significant praise and a bonus for the innovation. I stared at the designs, my throat tightening. "These are my drawings, from my workshop. I developed this system last year. I suspected as much when I saw your name on the wedding guest list." The style was inconsistent with Amanda's other work, but remarkably aligned with your documented approach. Anger flashed hot and immediate. "She stole my designs? My own sister? It appears so, which places me in an awkward position professionally and ethically, hence yesterday's action." He closed the portfolio carefully. "Take the weekend to consider my offer. The consulting position starts at $90,000 annually, with a project completion bonus structure we can discuss if you're interested." I left Reynolds Creative an hour later with a formal offer letter in my briefcase and a storm of conflicting emotions. The opportunity was exactly what I needed professionally. Challenging work with a prestigious firm, a salary that would stabilize my finances, and recognition of my abilities on my own terms. But accepting meant permanently damaging my family relationships. Throughout the weekend, my phone exploded with accusatory texts and voicemails from family members. Amanda had apparently shared her version of events widely, casting me as the villain who had somehow manipulated her boss into firing her on her wedding day. Not once did anyone ask for my perspective. By Monday morning, my decision was made. I signed the contract with Reynolds Creative and began work the following week, keeping my new position secret from my family to avoid immediate confrontation. Whatever bridges remained with them seemed already damaged beyond repair, but I saw no reason to actively burn them to the ground. The weeks following Amanda's wedding unfolded in parallel realities. In one, I disappeared into my new role at Reynolds Creative, thriving under the challenge of designing sustainable workspace solutions. In the other, I became the family scapegoat, blamed not only for Amanda's firing but for supposedly ruining her wedding. I learned through a cousin that the reception had continued despite the drama. The couple had canceled their Maldives honeymoon, ostensibly due to Amanda's sudden unemployment, but the narrative quickly transformed into another example of how I had damaged my sister's happiness. My parents stopped taking my calls entirely. Amanda blocked me on all social media platforms and, according to mutual friends, spent considerable energy sharing her version of events, casting herself as the victim of corporate politics and fraternal jealousy. Meanwhile, at Reynolds Creative, I discovered a world where my specific talents were not just accepted, but celebrated. The Sustainable Workspace Initiative, perfectly aligned with my interest in modular, adaptable furniture, designed for minimal environmental impact. My background in hands-on craftsmanship provided practical insights that complemented the firm's more theoretical design approaches. You see problems differently. My project manager, Lisa, observed after I reworked a troublesome conference table design. You think in terms of how things actually fit together, not just how they look on paper. Within a month, I was leading a small team focused on executable design, the crucial translation of creative concepts into functional reality. For the first time in my professional life, my learning differences became advantages rather than obstacles. My spatial reasoning and practical problem-solving earned respect from colleagues who had initially seemed intimidated by my hands-on approach. James Reynolds occasionally stopped by our workspace, observing our progress with quiet approval. "The Westfield project has been moved up," he informed me one afternoon. "They want the prototype for their executive suite by the end of next month." "We'll be ready," I promised, already mentally adjusting our timeline. "I have no doubt." He paused, studying the scale model on my workbench. "How are you settling in otherwise? Any complications?" I understood his unstated question about my family situation. "I'm focusing on the work," I replied simply. What I didn't share was that I'd begun seeing a therapist to process the lifetime of emotional manipulation I'd experienced. Dr. Larson specialized in adult children of narcissistic parents, and our weekly sessions helped me understand the dysfunctional patterns that had shaped my family dynamics. "You've spent your life trying to earn approval from people who defined you as the family failure," she observed during one particularly difficult session. "That's a game you can never win, because they've rigged the rules." "So what do I do instead?" I asked, genuinely unsure how to proceed. "You define success on your own terms, and you build connections with people who value you authentically." I took her words to heart, gradually allowing myself to develop friendships with colleagues who seemed to genuinely appreciate my contributions. I joined a weekend woodworking collective where I could maintain my hands-on skills while connecting with other craftspeople. Slowly, I began creating a life that wasn't defined by my family's narrow expectations. 3 months into my position at Reynolds, I made a disturbing discovery while archiving old project files. A folder labeled Urban Living Solutions contained multiple iterations of furniture designs, eerily similar to concepts I'd developed years earlier. The digital timestamps showed they had been submitted by Amanda shortly after visiting my workshop during the early days of my business. Further digging revealed a pattern of my sister appropriating ideas from various sources, making minimal modifications, and presenting them as original work. In one particularly brazen example, she had lifted an entire marketing strategy from a freelancer's portfolio and implemented it for a major client, claiming full credit for its success. I brought the evidence to Reynolds privately. "I'm not looking to further damage my sister's reputation," I explained, "but I think you should be aware of the extent of the problem." He reviewed the files with a grim expression. "This is worse than we suspected. We have active client campaigns built on potentially stolen intellectual property." He looked up at me with unexpected compassion. "I'm sorry, Frank. I know this can't be easy for you. I just need to know, did my work for you over the past months actually help offset any damage she caused?" "More than offset," he assured me. "Your modular workspace system for the Westfield project has already generated interest from 3 other potential clients. Your contribution has been invaluable." That evening, I sat in my apartment considering whether to confront Amanda with what I'd discovered. Despite everything, she was still my sister, and exposing her professional misconduct more widely would likely destroy any hope of eventual reconciliation. Yet allowing her behavior to continue unchecked meant enabling future victims of her plagiarism. Before I could decide how to proceed, My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Heard you're working for Reynolds now. Bold move after what you did to your sister. Sleep well knowing you've destroyed her career. Similar messages followed from various family friends and distant relatives, each one suggesting I had somehow orchestrated Amanda's firing out of jealousy or spite. The sudden barrage suggested Amanda had discovered my employment and was actively rallying support against me. The next day confirmed my suspicion when Lisa pulled me aside after our team meeting. Just a heads up. Someone's been calling our clients claiming our department is using stolen designs. 2 accounts have requested emergency meetings with James. Amanda? I said, not needing to elaborate further. Lisa nodded. James is handling it, but you should be prepared for questions. By the end of the week, it became clear that my sister had launched a calculated campaign to damage both my reputation and Reynolds' creative standing with clients. False reviews appeared online accusing the firm of intellectual property theft. Several industry contacts received anonymous emails suggesting my designs were plagiarized from other sources. We need to address this legally, Reynolds informed me after yet another client raised concerns. I've scheduled a meeting with our attorneys tomorrow morning. I'd like you to attend. That night I barely slept, troubled by the escalating situation and my role within it. I had entered this position hoping to rebuild my career quietly, while allowing my family relationships to heal over time. Instead, I found myself at the center of a professional ethics battle with my own sister. As painful as the situation was, I recognized that the patterns Dr. Larson had helped me identify were playing out exactly as predicted. By succeeding outside the narrative my family had created for me, I had disrupted their comfortable worldview. Amanda's reaction was extreme, but consistent with someone fighting to maintain control of a story in which she was the perpetual success and I the perpetual failure. For the first time, I felt genuine pity for my sister, rather than hurt or anger. What kind of insecurity drove someone to steal ideas rather than develop their own? What emptiness was she trying to fill with accolades built on others' work? With that realization came clarity about my path forward. I would protect myself and Reynolds Creative professionally, but I would not seek to punish Amanda beyond what was necessary for that protection. Perhaps someday, she would recognize her own patterns and choose to change them. The Saturday morning calm of my apartment was shattered by furious pounding on my door. Through the peephole I saw Amanda's distorted face, flushed with anger. Behind her stood Tyler, looking uncomfortable but determined, and to my surprise, my parents. For a moment, I considered not answering, but this confrontation had been brewing for months. Better to face it directly than let it fester further. I took a deep breath and opened the door. "How dare you?" Amanda burst in without waiting for an invitation, the others following in her wake. She wore designer jeans and a silk blouse that couldn't disguise the weight she'd lost since the wedding. "Working for Reynolds? After what you did to me?" "I didn't do anything to you, Amanda," I replied, keeping my voice level. "Reynolds offered me a position. I accepted. After getting me fired," she shrieked, pacing my living room like a caged animal. "You planned this somehow. Admit it." My mother stepped forward, her expression a mixture of disappointment and righteous anger. "Frank, how could you? Your own sister. You've always been jealous of her success," my father added, his arm protectively around Amanda's shoulders. "But this crosses a line." I looked at the 3 of them. These people who had known me my entire life yet seemed to understand me not at all. Tyler hovered near the door, clearly uncomfortable with the family drama, but unwilling to abandon his wife's crusade. "I didn't get Amanda fired," I said firmly. "Reynolds had concerns about her professional conduct long before the wedding. My employment with them came after, not before." "Liar," Amanda spat. "You've been feeding him false information about me, and now you're stealing my clients." "Your clients?" I raised an eyebrow. "You were in marketing. I'm in product design. We don't even work with the same clients." Don't play innocent, she snarled. I've seen the designs you're working on. They're derivatives of my concepts. The irony was so profound, I almost laughed. Amanda, we both know whose concepts they actually were. What is that supposed to mean? My father demanded. Before I could respond, there was another knock at my door. Through the still-open entryway stepped James Reynolds, accompanied by a sharp-featured woman carrying a leather portfolio. Perfect timing, Reynolds said, surveying the assembled family. I hope to catch everyone together. You, Amanda hissed. You have no right to be here. Actually, Miss Keller, I have every right, Reynolds replied calmly. This is Monica Schaefer, our corporate attorney. We're here because of the defamatory statements you've been making about both Frank and Reynolds Creative. Amanda blanched slightly, but held her ground. I'm merely informing potential clients about your unethical business practices. Hiring my brother immediately after firing me? The conflict of interest is obvious. Is it? Reynolds opened the portfolio Monica handed him. Because we have documented evidence that you've been falsely accusing us of intellectual property theft while actively engaging in that behavior yourself. What are you talking about? My mother interrupted. Amanda has always been honest and hardworking, unlike some people. She shot me a pointed look. Reynolds extracted several pages from the portfolio. These are designs submitted by Amanda as original work. He laid them on my coffee table. And these, he continued, producing another set of documents, are Frank's original sketches, dated over a year earlier. My parents leaned forward, comparing the nearly identical drawings. This doesn't prove anything. My father blustered. They could have collaborated. We didn't, I said quietly. Those drawings were in my private sketchbook, the one that disappeared from my workshop shortly after Amanda visited last year. You gave me permission to use your concepts, Amanda protested, but her voice lacked conviction. I did not. I kept my tone firm but not accusatory. I would have happily collaborated with you, Amanda. You didn't need to take my work without asking. Tyler had moved closer to examine the evidence, his expression darkening as he looked between the documents and his wife. Amanda? What is this? It's nothing, she insisted. Just professional jealousy and corporate politics. Reynolds produced more papers. We've identified at least 7 instances where Amanda presented others' work as her own. Not just Frank's designs, but concepts from junior designers, freelancers, and even competitors. My parents looked stricken, glancing between Amanda and the mounting evidence. There must be some misunderstanding, my mother said weakly. No misunderstanding, Monica, the attorney interjected. We have sworn statements from 3 Reynolds employees detailing Miss Keller's pattern of plagiarism. We also have documentation of her recent attempts to damage the company's reputation through false statements to clients. You're trying to destroy me, Amanda accused, turning to me with tears in her eyes. You couldn't stand that I was successful when you failed, so you're trying to tear me down. I met her gaze steadily. Amanda, I never wanted any of this. I just wanted to do my work and be recognized for my actual abilities, not be defined by the story our family created about me. What story? My father demanded. We've only ever wanted the best for both of you. Did you? I asked simply. Or did you decide early on that Amanda was the successful child and I was the failure? Did you ever actually look at what I could do, rather than focusing on what I couldn't? An uncomfortable silence fell over the room. Tyler cleared his throat. I think there's something else you should all see. He pulled out his phone, scrolling through files until he found what he wanted. I've been documenting things for a while, initially for my own peace of mind, but lately, because I've been considering divorce. Amanda gasped. Tyler, I'm sorry, Amanda, but this has gone too far. He handed his phone to my father. Scroll through. There are screenshots of emails, text messages, recordings of conversations. Amanda has been systematically taking credit for other people's work for years. She's also been actively undermining Frank whenever possible. My father's face grew increasingly gray as he scrolled through Tyler's evidence. My mother, reading over his shoulder, pressed her hand to her mouth in evident distress. "Why?" I asked Amanda softly. "We're family. I would have helped you if you needed ideas. Why steal them?" For the first time, Amanda's perfect composure crumbled completely. "Because everything always came so easily to you," she burst out, tears streaming down her face. "Do you have any idea how hard I've had to work for every achievement? The hours of studying, the networking, the constant pressure to perform, and then there's you, with your natural talent, making beautiful things, without even trying." "Without trying?" I echoed incredulously. "Amanda, I failed at school because I have learning disabilities, not because I wasn't trying. I spent thousands of hours perfecting my craft while our family treated me like a disappointment." "You were supposed to be the failure," she whispered, the raw truth finally emerging. "That was your role. Mine was to succeed. When your furniture started getting attention, when designers praised your work, it wasn't fair. It didn't fit the story." The room fell silent as the implications of her words sank in. Tyler looked away, clearly pained by his wife's admission. My parents seemed frozen in place, their worldview visibly crumbling. James Reynolds, who had observed the family drama with professional detachment, finally spoke. "We're not here to press charges, Amanda, but the false accusations against Reynolds Creative and Frank must stop immediately. We've prepared a settlement agreement that includes a retraction of your statements and a non-disclosure clause regarding this matter." "And if I refuse?" Amanda challenged, though her voice lacked conviction. "Then we proceed with a legal complaint for defamation, copyright infringement, and tortious interference with business relationships," Monica replied matter-of-factly. "The evidence is substantial, Miss Keller." My father, still holding Tyler's phone, finally looked up. "Amanda, I think you should sign their agreement." "Dad," she protested. "I'm looking at your own words here, Amanda." He gestured to the phone screen, his voice heavy with disappointment. "Things you've said about your brother, plans to undermine him professionally. This isn't who we raised you to be." My mother wiped tears from her eyes. "How did we not see this?" "Because it fit your narrative," I said gently. "You decided our roles early on. Amanda was the star, I was the problem child. It was easier to maintain that story than to question it." Amanda sank onto my couch, the fight draining from her. "What happens now?" she asked, sounding suddenly very young and lost. "You sign the agreement," Reynolds said. "You attend the professional ethics training specified in the settlement. And perhaps," he added, glancing at me, "you start rebuilding your family relationships on a more honest foundation." Tyler moved to stand beside his wife, not touching her, but offering his presence nonetheless. "I think we all need some time to process this," he said quietly. "Amanda and I have things to discuss privately." My parents looked utterly defeated. The family mythology they'd constructed and maintained for decades now irreparably damaged. "Frank," my father began, then stopped, seemingly at a loss for words. "We should go," my mother said finally. "But Frank, can we talk? Another time, when things are calmer?" I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. After decades of dismissal and disappointment, the tentative olive branch felt simultaneously too little and enormously significant. As they prepared to leave, Reynolds handed the settlement agreement to Amanda. "Review it with your attorney if you wish, but we'll need your decision by Monday." She took the document without comment, avoiding eye contact with everyone in the room. One by one they filed out. Reynolds and Monica first, followed by my sister and Tyler, and finally my parents. My father pausing briefly at the door with his hand half raised in an aborted gesture of, "What? Apology? Farewell?" I couldn't tell, and he left without speaking. As the door closed behind them, I stood alone in my apartment, surrounded by the evidence of a family mythology unraveled. Despite the vindication, there was no triumph in this moment, only the somber recognition that healing, if it came at all, would be a long and complicated process. 6 months after the confrontation in my apartment, I stood at a podium in the Seattle Design Center, accepting the Emerging Talent Award for Sustainable Furniture Design. The spotlight felt warm on my face as I scanned the audience of industry professionals. "Thank you for this recognition," I began. 3 years ago, my workshop closed its doors during the recession. Today, the Keller modular system is being implemented in office spaces across the country. This journey has taught me that setbacks aren't failures. They're redirections toward more authentic paths. From my vantage point, I could see James Reynolds nodding approvingly from his table near the front. Beside him sat Lisa and other colleagues from Reynolds Creative, where my department had grown to include 7 designers specializing in sustainable workplace solutions. The Westfield project had exceeded all expectations, with our modular office system receiving industry attention for both its aesthetic appeal and environmental responsibility. 3 additional major clients had commissioned similar systems, and we were currently developing a scaled version for residential applications. Success isn't linear, I continued. For those of us who think or learn differently, conventional paths often don't accommodate our specific talents. I'm grateful to work with a company that recognizes the value of diverse thinking approaches. This wasn't just a professional platitude. Over the past 6 months, I had established the Divergent Design Foundation, a nonprofit organization providing mentorship and resources to neurodivergent individuals interested in design fields. With financial backing from Reynolds Creative and several industry partners, we had already awarded 5 scholarships to promising young designers who, like me, excelled in spatial reasoning while struggling with traditional academic environments. Finally, I want to acknowledge that no achievement exists in isolation. Our connections with others, both supportive and challenging, shape our professional journeys in profound ways. My gaze drifted to a table near the back, where my parents sat somewhat awkwardly but undeniably present. Our relationship remained a work in progress, with weekly coffee meetings gradually rebuilding understanding between us. The first such meeting, 3 weeks after the confrontation, had been stilted and painful. "We didn't see you," my father had admitted, staring into his coffee cup. "We saw the story we'd created about you, and we kept forcing you to fit that narrative regardless of the evidence in front of us. We failed you," my mother added, reaching tentatively for my hand across the table. "And we're so sorry, Frank." The apology, while imperfect, marked the beginning of a more honest relationship. They had attended therapy sessions with me, struggling to understand their role in enabling Amanda's behavior while dismissing my legitimate talents. Progress came in small moments. My father asking genuine questions about my design process. My mother proudly showing photos of my work to her friends. As I concluded my acceptance speech and returned to my seat, my phone vibrated with a text message. "Amanda, congratulations. Well deserved." Our relationship had taken the longest to address, complicated by the legal settlement and Tyler's decision to file for divorce. Amanda had completed the required ethics training and accepted a marketing position with a smaller firm, where she was reportedly building a portfolio of genuinely original work. Our interactions remained limited to occasional text messages and one tense but civil lunch meeting, during which she had struggled to articulate an apology that didn't include justifications for her actions. "I don't expect forgiveness," she had said finally, "but I am trying to change. It wasn't everything, but it was a start. A crack in the wall of competitiveness and resentment that had divided us for so long." After the award ceremony, Reynolds approached me with a glass of champagne. "Congratulations, Frank. The recognition is well deserved." "Thank you for taking a chance on me," I replied. Not everyone would have looked past the family drama. "Talent speaks for itself," he said simply. "Speaking of which, I wanted to discuss your future with the company. The board has approved creating a new position, Director of Sustainable Design Initiatives. I'd like you to consider taking it on. The offer represented everything I'd once thought unattainable: professional recognition, creative authority, financial security. Yet the past 6 months had taught me that external validation, while gratifying, wasn't the foundation of genuine self-worth. I'm honored, I told him sincerely. I'd like to review the details, of course, but it sounds like an exciting opportunity. Later that evening, as my parents prepared to leave the celebration, my father embraced me awkwardly. You proved us all wrong, son. I'm sorry we couldn't see what was right in front of us. It wasn't about proving anyone wrong, Dad, I corrected gently. It was about finding the right environment for my specific abilities. Well, you certainly found it. He gestured around the design center. Your mother and I are very proud of you. I know we haven't earned the right to say that yet, but we're working on it. The simple acknowledgement, something I had craved throughout my childhood and early adulthood, felt both healing and somewhat anticlimactic. I had spent so many years seeking my family's approval that I had nearly missed the opportunity to approve of myself. 2 weeks after the awards ceremony, I received an unexpected visitor at my office. Amanda stood in the doorway, looking more like the sister I remembered from childhood than the polished professional who had dismissively introduced me at her wedding. "Do you have a minute?" she asked hesitantly. I gestured to the chair opposite my desk, taking in her nervous posture and the small package she carried. "I saw the article about your foundation in the Seattle Times," she began. "The work you're doing with neurodivergent students. It's really impressive, Frank." "Thank you," I replied, unsure where this conversation was heading. Amanda placed the package on my desk, sliding it toward me. "I found this while clearing out some storage boxes. I thought you should have it." Unwrapping the tissue paper, I found a small wooden car, crudely carved but recognizable as the first project I had completed in woodshop class at age 12. I had given it to Amanda as a birthday present, proud of having made something with my own hands. "You kept this?" I asked, genuinely surprised. "I kept all of them," she admitted quietly. "Everything you ever made for me, even when things were bad between us, I couldn't bring myself to throw them away." The admission revealed a complexity to our relationship I had long forgotten. That beneath the competition and resentment lay genuine connection, however buried it had become. "I've been working with a therapist," Amanda continued, "trying to understand why I did the things I did. It's not an excuse, but I never felt good enough on my own. Every achievement just raised the bar higher. When your work started getting attention, I panicked. If you could succeed on your own terms, what did that say about all my desperate striving to fit someone else's definition of success? Amanda, I never wanted to compete with you. I know that now." She managed a small, sad smile. "That's what makes it all worse, honestly. You were just being you, and I couldn't handle it." We talked for over an hour, not resolving everything but laying groundwork for a relationship that might someday evolve into genuine siblinghood again. As she prepared to leave, Amanda paused at the door. "I'm proud of you, Frank. Not because of the awards or the success, but because you never let our family's story about you become your own story about yourself. That takes real courage." In the year that followed, I expanded both my professional responsibilities and personal commitments. The Divergent Design Foundation established partnerships with 3 community colleges, creating alternative pathways to design careers for students who excelled in spatial reasoning while struggling in traditional academic settings. My parents became unexpected advocates, with my mother volunteering as a mentor to parents of neurodivergent children. Amanda and I established a cautious friendship, meeting monthly for coffee and gradually rebuilding trust through small, consistent interactions. She had found her footing at her new company and was dating again after finalizing her divorce from Tyler. When she suggested collaborating on a community workshop series combining her marketing expertise with my design focus, I recognized it as the olive branch it was. On the anniversary of that fateful wedding day, I sat in my apartment reflecting on the extraordinary journey of the past year. The wooden car Amanda had returned to me sat on my bookshelf, a reminder of the complicated nature of family relationships and the possibility of redemption even after profound hurt. My phone buzzed with a text message from a colleague sharing a photo from that day's newspaper. My sustainable desk system featured in an article about workplace innovations. Another buzz brought a message from my mother asking if I'd be joining them for Sunday dinner. A third was from Amanda confirming our planning meeting for the workshop series. Each notification represented a relationship transformed, not erased of its painful history, but evolving into something more authentic and balanced than before. The humiliation of that wedding introduction had led, through a winding and difficult path, to a life aligned with my true abilities and surrounded by people who valued my contributions on my own terms. The journey had taught me that true success isn't measured by titles or accolades, but by the courage to define yourself rather than accepting others' limiting definitions. By rejecting the role of family disgrace, I had discovered my genuine worth, not as someone trying to prove others wrong, but as someone finally free to be entirely, authentically myself. Have you ever had to overcome other people's limiting beliefs about you to find success on your own terms? I'd love to hear your experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe to support more content like this, and share it with someone who might need to hear that they're not defined by other people's narratives. Thank you for joining me on this journey. And remember, your true worth isn't determined by anyone else's perception. It's found in the courage to define yourself.